mentioned sexuality, marriage, sex before marriage. Many of the people in this time of their lives have finished their education and start to work in places where they're not sure if they're comfortable, and their questions about this may be of such a nature that they've not been comfortable asking the church. And I'm thinking especially about homosexuality. They feel that they can't ask their church friends and brothers and sisters about these issues. And what's your advice on how can the church become a place where these questions can be answered?
That's a very important, very important question you asked. And I think it's a fair way of putting it. I would say that the kind of questions, and thereby also the kind of answers, that engages a teenager will be different than somebody that engages somebody who's in his or her 20s. They are faced with different kinds of realities. And what may have been a satisfactory answer when you were 17 is not going to be a satisfactory answer when you're 27. So we have to just be very, very sensitive to that. There is no model which says these are the kind of answers that will deal. What I would say, however, is for us to maintain credibility with the young adults, young professionals, for us to maintain credibility as a church, we have to maintain an open discussion. It must be possible, it must be safe for people to come and talk about difficult issues with their pastor or with friends in the church. I think it is also very, very important to remember that the church is a saving instrument. We are there. It is not a lodge, it's not a club for the people who have passed the entrance test. It is a community of people who are worshiping Christ and through whom Christ is working to reach other people. Look, this goes particularly, I think you raised the question of homosexuals. I have said very consistently, you know, this is one of the questions that comes up on every single one of the 30 Let's Talk live television shows we have. Every single one. So it's an issue around the world in every culture. What about the place of homosexuals and so forth? And I have been, they may disagree, you may disagree, but I've been very, very candid about my own view. Whether I read the Old Testament narratives, of which there are 3 or 4, 5 maybe, or whether I read the Apostle Paul, I cannot come to any other conclusion than that the practice of homosexual lifestyle is offensive to God. I cannot draw any other conclusion. I say that with some hesitation because I don't want to cause offense to it. But I don't see that there is any way that I can read the narratives in the Old Testament or the comments by Paul in any other way. However, the moment I say this, I have to say to myself, remember, Christ loves them. Am I able to communicate the love of Christ to them? Or am I only able to reflect my personal conviction, which I think is in harmony with Scripture? I have to remember that Christ is in the business of saving everyone he possibly can lay his hands on. Okay? And there will be people who will struggle with lifestyle choices in this life and will do it for as long as they live. But who will, in the moment of translation, when we shall all be changed in the twinkling of an eye, be changed. Unless you think that only they will be changed. Look, we will be changed too. Everyone is going to be changed too. And what you may discovered on the earth made new that there are different realities that we're facing. So what I think is important. It's not so much a question of right and wrong, but it's a question also. I think we need to think about right and wrong, but I think it's also a question of how am I able to relate and love this person? How can I move around among them without they feeling that I am looking at them with a sense of disdain, you know, and a sense of condemnation, even though we don't say it. It's a matter of how you look and how you relate. How can we avoid? This is a challenge that those of us who are straight have to work on. We have to just, yeah. People are the ones that matter. People are more important than anything else. Because people is the only thing God is going to save. He's not going to save standard statements. He's going to save people only. So that's the important point to take.
Great reminder.
Can I take a follow-up question statement? Thing on this, right?
Please,
Because I was going to say a question after Karen took it up, because I think it's a very important issue, but I feel when I grew up as a child in Jamaica, it was the issue of sexuality was a lot more open in the church, but I feel like now in this time, I feel it's very quiet. It's like the church is very quiet in sexuality. I know the church has a stand on sexuality, but it's not expressing loud and clear and expressing, what can you say, repetitively, okay, this is the stand of the church, but they do not say how the gap between the stand of the church and where people actually are.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm just trying to be very candid, because I know it's there, and the whole issue of sexuality is a very big issue in that the values of the church and the Bible does not fit the modern society.
Sure.
Where biblical times, people got married very young.
Yeah.
Today, people are probably never get married, or probably never find a partner. What do they do? You know, and then as an issue of homosexuality comes up, what do people do when they meet an issue like that? When they meet and they say one day, I feel like I'm homosexual. What do they do? Where do they turn to church? Who's going to help them? So there's like these difficult questions around sexuality. But at the same time, I think they're so difficult that maybe many might shy away in the church from touching it or, you know, going in depth to deal with these issues. And at the same time, I wonder, should the church have like a center for dealing with this? A knowledge base, a think tank, working with these kind of issues? How do we approach? How do we in modern times? How do we give viable answers?
Okay. Yeah. Take the whole question of sexuality. Not just homosexuality, but the also sex outside marriage. How does it help a person for the church to adopt the stand which will accommodate the most? Is that the most helpful? I don't think so.
No, I'm not saying to do that.
No, I understand. I'm not challenging you.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'm not saying that.
I'm not. No, that's fine. The church is not a community for maximum accommodation. Okay? It's not. The church has certain values which defines biblical values, certain standards. But the church is filled with people who cannot reach these standards all the time consistently. Okay? So I'm back again at the question of how do we treat one another when we do not quite measure up. I mean, I am quite happy. Well, no, happy is not the word. Scratchy. I'm quite ready to accept a situation where you have the church defining its standards very, very clearly. And there are people in my church, many people in my church, maybe most, maybe in some instances all, who in respect to a number of these issues, including sexuality, and particularly young adults, do not reach or do not conduct their lives in a way which reflects the standard of the church. The church,